Here's Mike Winters.
And good morning. It is 22 minutes after 9 o'clock. And joining us in studio this morning, your local New York Life agent, Damon Graham, with us. Good morning, Damon.
Good morning, Mike. How are you this morning?
Doing good. How about yourself?
We're doing better, and you're sounding like your nap is much needed.
Yeah, I'm tired, but
Yep.
I'm doing way better than I was earlier in the week. I
Praise
feel
God.
night and day there. So hopefully next week all goes according to plan. Knocking on wood, we'll be back in Monday.
Praise
So,
God.
how's life with you and your family?
You know, like Sean was alluding to, we've been battling the same situation that you are. And
You've been fighting this COVID
yes,
shenanigans too.
yes, and I will give it no props. What I will say about it is, take it serious and early addressing the situation early is pivotal to minimizing its effects.
Yeah, I did a lot of zinc at the beginning, and that really helped. That does help.
Well,
Help.
did you
And I
did you get on any therapeutics?
I just because I've been vaccinated, so my symptoms were very mild compared to the others. So no, I just did the zinc stuff and then some cold meds, and I'm getting better.
Gotcha.
I will say this: I'm not telling people vaccination. You do what's best for you. Me personally, I am thankful that I had the vaccine. From what I'm hearing, people that aren't vaccinated are getting a much worse go of this than I am. So I'm thankful for that.
Well, and that was my point is, vaccinated or not, if you start feeling sick, hit it head on. Get to the doctor, let them make the determination of what your best line of action is, but don't wait. I thought when it first started, I thought, this is just a normal flu that I have gotten in the past, and I waited longer than I should, and so therefore it has drug out even longer.
Gotcha.
So whatever it is, if you start feeling any kind of symptoms, make sure you go to the doctor. Make sure you let them make the determination. I mean, that's their job. That's what they know. And
I lucked out. I don't know if I lucked out, but my wife. That's who I contacted her from. She got it from school before me, so I had actually isolated a couple days, 3-4 days before I started showing symptoms, just out of precaution. So I kind of I said it's either coming or it's not, and so I prepped for the coming, and I'm glad I did now.
certainly, and definitely the preventative zinc, D3, vitamin C, B complexes. All of those, of course, I mean, they're good for you anyway. But as a preventative and as a method of getting through the process, definitely.
Yep, and get some sun. That's that vitamin D part.
Yep.
That's I've noticed if I go outside. I mean, I'm tired from walking, but if I kind of just sit out there and I can feel a little better. You know what I mean? So you just feel, I don't know, sun's in you. It's just give me a little energy.
Definitely. And we live in the best part of the world to get that.
That we do.
But and Mike, I'll tell you, it's kind of a reality check. I mean, of course, being in the industry, life insurance industry, the past 18 months have definitely played a toll.
Sure.
And seeing the mortality of not just the virus, but everything that ensued from it. I mean, the lockdowns, the closing in, the social non-interaction. It really drives home the fact of making your plans, and and very much so in the fact of you and I have talked for several months about being proactive, sitting down and starting the process, whether it's investments or life insurance or long-term care, the whole ball of wax. But, something that really hits home is making sure that if you do the planning, that you make sure you finish it by establishing your beneficiaries the correct way.
Yeah.
and then taking that extra step of making sure you have your will in place and your powers of attorney, and all of that goes into the plan. But when this pandemic really kind of gets your attention and says, it could be any time. I don't care how healthy you are.
Yeah.
I just had a client pass from the disease, and literally when we were doing her planning, we were expecting her to live into her 90s.
Wow.
She was healthy. She was in her 60s.
Wow.
And she passed from this. And it's just a real eye opener to say, yes, the planning is important, extremely important, but you also have to pay attention to the details.
Yeah. Well, and I think also too, this time is a reminder of, and it's a cold truth, is, and it's life. If you don't look out for you and yours, no one else will.
Right.
And that's the world we live in. And yeah, we all want to be helpful, and you've got family that hopefully's helping look out for you. But at the end of the day, if you want to achieve your goals and do your things, there's nobody else on the planet that's gonna do everything you need to do except for you. Yeah. And that's what you got to do.
And I don't care where you stand politically right now. The push is that, okay, the government can take care of this, and this, and this for you. Well, that's short term, or
right.
we hope it doesn't become long term. But you're right. If you don't take the stand for yourself, it won't happen. I mean, no one's going to go out and put a life insurance and policy in place for you. I mean, even your workplace 401k isn't going to put money into an account for you unless you make that step and do it for yourself as well. So
sure.
You're exactly right. If we don't take personal financial responsibility to take the steps to make sure that our loved ones are taken care of, and that's the most important part, is most of the planning outside of an investment for retirement or that kind of thing, the planning is for those that you love and those that you're going to leave behind when you die. And if you're not willing to take that step for them, that says a lot for you.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And that's all that we talk about here is just it's and really it's not hard if you do it younger, obviously, but if you incorporate it into the plan. And that's where Damon helps. He can help with the plan. And I think most people want to do something. They either don't have the proper tools to know what to do, or they just have, they know, but they don't have any discipline and they're not willing to commit. And that's where you can kind of help and nudge and really
educate.
Give the bonuses, the benefits, but also look, if you don't do this, this is what you're looking at down the road. And I'm not trying to scare people, but it's a cutthroat world. And when it comes to finances and it comes to things, there's successes and failures, and people live great lives by the successes and can live rough lives by the failures if you don't protect yourself and or do it the right way. And that's where Damon can help navigate and guide you and give you information that helps you make a right decision for you and your family.
Mike, you hit something and said, well, I'm not trying to scare you. Well, I don't care what kind of sales. If you've taken any kind of sales training, one of the things that they, that is taught is you have to disturb your audience to make the sale. Well, it's not scaring them. It's just bringing the reality to the table.
Sure.
And saying, look, here's the reality. We're all going to die at some point. I mean, that's a given. But it's how and in what shape is our financial and our, everything else that we have to organize. What kind of shape is that going to be in when we do pass.
Absolutely. To be, I mean, I'm not going to get spiritual and all that. People have beliefs and things, but I know a lot of people they want to leave a legacy. They want to, leave something behind that people remember them for, whether it's, things they do or whatever you want. And for most of us, that legacy is making sure your kids are set up so they can do great things, and in turn their kids do that. And in essence, that you're establishing that legacy by setting up your family, your kids, and things for the future through your actions today.
Exactly. And it's if you really boil down to a very simplistic viewpoint, just think about this. If you yourself died today, and you don't have life insurance, who in your family is going to be willing to step up and write a check for your funeral?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can guarantee you that the funeral homes are, they're not going to do anything until they have cash in hand.
Oh yeah.
And when you stop and think, okay, who would be willing to write a check for my funeral, no matter what size it is, anything from, cremation all the way up to full blown, horse carriages and everything else, whatever it is, who can write a check for that? And how is that check writing going to impact their lives?
Mm-hmm.
Because sure, someone may be able to step up and write a $10,000 check, but where did that $10,000 come from, and what did it affect? Did it affect their kids' college, possibly your grandkids' college? So taking that financial responsibility just to say, hey, I'm going to put a policy in place that makes sure that nobody has to write a check for my funeral.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're one of those folks that's like, hey, when I die, I don't want to be the burden. I don't want to mess up their lives anymore, then it's going to happen. And by doing this legwork now, you're really doing concrete things to not just say that, but actually do that. So
yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I had a gentleman I go to church with came up to me the other day, and he goes, "Hey, can I really get life insurance for this cheap?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, this other guy was talking to me about it, and he gave me these quotes." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "And if you'd listened to me 5 years ago, it would have been even cheaper." Yeah. And he just looked at me dumbfounded. And he was like, "You're kidding me." I said, "No, you should have listened to me."
It's the early bird gets the worm, and a lot of financial world that is true, and that's what this conversation is all about. We obviously can't solve your problems in 30-minute conversation here. We can't do that, but if we can set the table to get you to start thinking about solving your own problems or going in that direction, it's a lifestyle. It's financial planning and getting that done is no different than dieting, exercise, and doing the other things you do in your life. It's getting a routine, getting a system, and doing it. And a lot of us will sit there and look for the latest fashions on diets or food, drink, or a magic ingredient that's supposed to make us feel healthy, but you won't invest that same amount of time on making sure your budget's square or you're making the purchases to invest in your future and when to set back and things like that. And if you put that kind of detail that you do researching what's the new acai whatever, you're going to be just half that time. You're going to be in good shape.
Oh yeah, I mean it's all in preparation. I mean it's all, and it's one of the biggest objections that I've come across in 13 years is people feel inferior if they don't know or don't know the questions to ask, and if they don't have somebody that they trust and can be vulnerable in front of, they're not going to get it done.
Sure.
So, I'll reiterate, of course, I would enjoy the opportunity to sit down with you and discuss your issues or your problems or how we can fix it and what kind of plan we can put together. But I will tell you this, if you have an existing agent or advisor, sit down with them, review your situation, because you don't know how many times I've sat down with somebody that they weren't originally my client, and we look at their policies and they have an X as their primary beneficiary that they don't even have anything to do with anymore. And I'm like, you're going to give your current wife is going to not get anything and your ex is going to get everything. And they're like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, it's just simple. Sit down, review your beneficiaries, review the type of coverage you have, make sure that it's still viable.
Yeah. I'm crowbarring this just because just the timing's right there. I just happened to watch the documentary on Netflix that just debuted featuring Bob Ross, and it's talking about his life, but the bigger part of that documentary is the money, and some of the things Damon's talking about right here in this conversation. Bob Ross's son would probably be in better shape if Bob Ross was more attentive to how the finances were run as opposed to just letting someone else do it, because that someone else has now screwed his family for generations.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and you're right. It's finding someone that you trust. That's the biggest issue. And I first time appointments sit down, and we may never get to the root of the conversation. We may sit there for an hour just getting to know each other, because I don't feel that I can make recommendations for your life or your plan until I know what makes you tick.
sure.
And
Well, there's no cookie cutter.
no,
There's plans, and they might fit most, but that's where you come in and say, all right, here's the plan. We're going to tweak it more for you, though.
Right.
But like you said, if you don't know what this person goals and aspirations are, it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to retire a billionaire? Do you want to retire? Everyone has different goals.
Sure.
People, monetary is bigger. Others, it's not, and they want to reflect it that way. And that's where you sit and talk with them and say, hey, what do you want to do?
exactly. And it's really interesting, Mike. And going on 13 years of my career, I have, in the last year, I have had more death claims than I have in the first 12. And and the interesting thing is very few of them have been COVID related.
Really, that's surprising.
It is, and it's kind of interesting because the age of these individuals spans everywhere from under 50 to right around 70.
Okay, so because I was thinking for a second there, I was thinking, well, maybe like the time you were starting out or whatever, and you were getting these clients in, and maybe they just all were on the same
No.
age, but no, that's different. They're all different age
it's
groups
all
and things.
different.
Okay,
And in a lot of instances, it just feels like, okay, these individuals, they got past 2020 and they said, okay, I'm done. If this is what I have to look forward to, I'm done. And because it's very interesting, because like I said, very few are actually COVID related, but it's just a matter of a lot of people are dying in today's world.
and they not a sense of optimism.
No.
So,
No.
well, the brain is a very powerful thing, and how many times do you see like a person dies, and their spouse generally goes within a year,
Yep.
regardless of health. They could be the healthiest person on the planet, but to me, that's all the brain. That's the relationship, and you lose a desire to do something.
Yep.
And it's and the point is, don't get there. Don't get to that point. Let talk with Damon. Get and this is a lifelong relationship. It really is, because depending on how your age is and everything else and where your goals are today, 10 years down the road, your goals may change a bit.
Yes.
And that's where Damon can come in and say, all right, this is how we adapt and overcome on there.
Yeah.
So,
And that's one of the most, to me, this was stressed to me from an old agent when I first got into I say old, he had a seasoned agent whenever I first got in the business, is he stressed, he said, don't lose touch with your clients. And I was like, well, that shouldn't be a hard thing. Well, now that I'm going on 13 years in the industry,
Makes sense.
it makes all the sense in the world. And it's very difficult. I mean, in the first several years, I was very adamant, sat down with my clients once or twice a year, reviewed everything, went over everything, made sure, blah, blah, blah. Now it's getting more and more difficult as my book of business grows.
Sure. And
But
then the world we live in makes it a little trickier too.
it is. And, in 2020, before Zoom became, popular with everybody, it was difficult because you call somebody up and, just to check on them, because I did a lot of that in 2020, is just call and check and make sure that they were okay. Mm-hmm. And that conversation went from, a 2-minute checkup to a 45-minute conversation because they hadn't talked to anybody in 2 weeks.
They just want to connect.
Exactly. They just needed interaction. That's where in a lot of parts of the country are still like that. They're still sheltering in place. And
I've had that feeling for the last week.
Yeah.
I know what it feels to be out of touch now. I mean, it's different.
at least you've got the radio as an outlet.
I do. This is my psychology class right here. Is I get my therapy in this thing. But you're right, and mental health just overall has been declining over. I mean, this last couple of years, and that makes a huge difference. And regardless of what the world's going to hand us here, whether it's more of this or better times, you can weather it by just having simple conversations with a guy like Damon. Yeah. I'm telling you,
peace of mind.
Life's going to stink sometimes, but when you've got a backup plan, when you've got something that can help you out when things get really bad, it makes all the difference, not only to your physical being, but your mental and social being as well.
Of course. And when you stop and think, just the peace of mind knowing, okay, so even if you put a simplistic term policy in place that's going to cover your mortgage, cover your funeral, and give your spouse, 2 years worth of your income to make sure that they can get on their feet.
Yeah.
Just the thought process of that, knowing that, hey, I can go to bed, and if I don't wake up, my family's okay.
Yeah.
That makes, you talk about mental health, that's huge.
Yep. And another tip, while we're talking about this, the people you're bequeathing and all that, make sure they're well versed on everything that you've got going on.
Yes.
Or at least put them in touch with someone. Like if it's someone like, hey, if I die, call Damon.
Exactly.
Then do that. But make sure you have that plan in place.
No, and you're exactly right, and that's part of the process that I go through. Is once, in fact, that's a form that I spend quite a bit of time on, is developing the beneficiaries, because and a lot of people think, oh well, that's easy, it's going to my spouse, right? But if you're traveling with your spouse and you're both killed in an accident, where does that money go?
Yeah, then what happens?
Then it goes to your estate if you haven't established, a secondary and a tertiary beneficiary. And let me tell you this, that in the state of New Mexico, death benefits as a whole are tax-free, going to an individual. In some instances, if they go through your estate, there's no telling what can happen to them. That'd be a question for Matt.
Secure.
Plug
Makes
for
sense.
Matt. But, so making sure your beneficiaries are set up correctly so that the money's going to go in the right direction is pivotal to a plan. And then making sure, taking that extra step, like I said earlier, making sure your wills and your powers of attorney and your executors, and those are fairly simple in most cases.
Yeah. They're easy.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but again, doing it ahead of time, doing it when times aren't rough necessarily, you know what I mean? Those things count. I know we don't unfortunately think of these things until you're lying in the hospital room. That's not the time.
No.
Make that conversation today. Hope to God you never have to do it anytime soon, but it's so much better when it's in place because you're already dealing with stress and emotions times 20 during that tragic time. The last thing you want to do is worry about the security and safety side. You just want to focus on that time on grieving and healing and not wondering how you're going to pay the bills or what you're going to eat tomorrow.
Exactly. And one more layer of that, and it's sometimes very, very, it's neglected, is your workplace benefits. Establishing your beneficiaries on that. So after you sit down with your advisor and you go through the process and you've got your life insurance in place and blah, 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 and you've got your beneficiary set up, take that and apply that same type thought process to your workplace benefits.
Sure. And fully understand them.
Yeah.
I know that's a lot of times they say, "Oh, I got a 401k." And I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean that you have? You know, and if you don't understand that, talk to Damon. He can help you navigate through that stuff.
Definitely. But
Very good.
you know, in several instances, you come across, and I'm working through one scenario right now with a client. They didn't heed my warning of, hey, make these changes to your beneficiaries at work. They didn't do it. Well,
Now they're biting it.
exactly.
Biting them on it.
And
Oh, man.
have secondaries, have tertiaries, you know, because just like I said, if your primary is traveling with you and you're both killed, your secondary doesn't need to be in the vehicle as well. And if they are,
Exactly.
make sure you have a tertiary that is 1,000 miles away to make sure that that planning happens the way that you want it to. And there again, like you said earlier, make sure they understand what your plan is, where your documents are, and at the very minimum, give them my card and say, look, if something happens to me, call Damon.
Yeah. That's exact. Trust me, if that step has been forgotten, I've seen it in other stories where the planning was done except for the education of the people afterwards. And it took a while for them to figure it all out because they were flying blind.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Damon, unfortunately, I don't have my information in front of me, so I'm going to rely on you to give out the phone number and the email
Certainly.
and all that.
Certainly. Feel free to give me a call to set up a time to visit. We can do Zoom. We can do on the phone. We can do in person. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. My office number is 575-623-0803 and 623-0803. Or you can catch me the majority of the time on my cell phone at 575-626-4298.
He loves when you call at 2 a.m.
Well,
Just kidding. Don't do that.
If it's a crisis, definitely, you know, it is what it is. But 626-4298. Of course, I've got an office here locally, and I would be more than happy to sit down with you, establish, you know, what is bothering you. What are your concerns?
I'm hoping you listen to this conversation. You're thinking, you know what? I need to get my ducks in a row. I'm really naive on how to do all this. Call Damon. Say, hey, I heard you this morning. I'm a hot mess. Help me. And he'll be happy to sit down and have the conversation to say, well, what are you trying to do? And all right, now we know that. Here's how we do it.
Yep.
So
Definitely so.
awesome. Well, Damon, appreciate the visit. I'm glad to hear you guys are getting through the COVID stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And we're praying for you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in person next time.
Most definitely. And Mike, the same to you. We've been praying for you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Have an awesome weekend.
Do the same, sir.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.